Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Highland Park, Illinois, July 15, 2024. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Bruckman. Present. Councilmember Ross.
Present.
Councilmember Tapia.
Present.
Councilmember Lidwer.
Here.
Councilmember Stone. Councilmember Bloomberg.
Here.
Mayor Rotering.
Here, do we need to reestablish Councilmember Ross's participation? Councilmember Ross, what are the name of your children?
Cameron and Ian.
Thank you. That is she. She can join us now to participate. Thank you. Excellent. We have a quorum. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular City Council meeting held June 10th, 2024?
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
May I have a motion?
Aye.
Whoops. You have to abstain because you weren't here. Okay. And may I have a approval of the minutes of the closed session of the regular City Council meeting held June 10th, 2024?
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Abstain. And you abstain. Thank you. Okay. May I have a motion to approve the warrant list?
So moved. Second.
Any comments or questions on the warrant list? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Bruckman. Aye. Councilmember Ross.
Aye.
Councilmember Tapia.
Aye.
Councilmember Lidwer.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays. The warrant list is approved. We'll now move to the report of the mayor. Over 9 months ago, we all watched with horror and sadness as more than 1,200 people were murdered, thousands were wounded, and over 240 people of all ages were taken hostage to Gaza. As we have at every City Council meeting since October 7th, we continue to call for the safe return of all who are held hostage and stand in solidarity with them and their loved ones, including family and friends here in Highland Park. Thank you. Earlier this evening, we held our Committee of the Whole meeting to talk about the policy issues and response options to direct action, which would be construed as protests in residential neighborhoods, talking of anti-Semitic comments and so forth in our community. Recognizing that harassment and intimidation cannot go unanswered, we talked about current laws and how we could change local laws and lobby potentially for new state laws to further mitigate these types of activities. I shared the following information at that meeting, and I think it's important to share it again, as several people have joined us at this meeting to share their concerns who were not able to join us at 5:30. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge that the vitriol and the stories that we've all been hearing are painful, and we appreciate everyone's patience in waiting to meet until today. As we navigate through these challenging times, it's important to recognize the impact these narratives have had on each of us, on our staff, and on our community. I also want to share some personal background that I believe is of relevance to the community and to the discussion we had earlier and potentially may have this evening during Business from the Public. 6 of the 7 City Council members sitting before you are Jewish. You may not know this, but of the 7 members of this council, 6 of us are Jewish. Individually and collectively, we deeply feel the pain, the hurt, the fear, the anger that comes with generational trauma, each of us with our own stories of our own families, the Holocaust, pogroms, and anti-Semitism. Further, one of us is the child of a Holocaust survivor and an Israeli. The 7th member, though not Jewish, has lived in this community for over 20 years and grew up in another country under a military dictatorship with the constant threat of domestic terrorism from the Shining Path. Our Corporation Counsel, who has been guiding us through the issues of the past few weeks, is also Jewish. Our city manager fled her country with her family as a child during a civil war, her own home having been bombed. She wears a necklace given to her by her mother containing a piece of shrapnel from that bomb. And in support of the Jewish people, she also wears a bracelet in support of Israel on her wrist. When he was a 7-year-old boy, our police chief's father, also a police officer, was taken hostage, beaten, and then shot in the head point blank and spent months in a coma, bearing the impacts of that violence for the rest of his life. He died when our chief was 16 years old. If there was ever a group of individuals that understand the pain, the visceral pain of this community, I'd argue that we are sitting before you. We each understand the fear of being intimidated because of who we are or extreme external circumstances beyond our control. I just wanted to make sure that everybody in this room has that background, because we each want to do whatever we can to mitigate any threats, any intimidation. Given our personal experiences with trauma and violence, it's essential for us to approach any conversation in this area with empathy and a deep understanding of the impact that these issues have on individuals and families. I believe our diverse backgrounds and shared experiences of overcoming adversity make us qualified to address those concerns. And earlier this evening at our Committee of the Whole meeting, we talked about policies aimed at enhancing the safety and security of our community. Our city manager, I believe, is now going to provide a brief summary of that discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. Pleased to do that. So as noted, the Committee of the Whole meeting began at 5:30. It was held in the pre-session conference room, and we had several overflow rooms where the live stream of that meeting took place. This is the City Council meeting. This meeting is also live streamed, so for those watching virtually, there's a number of people here in the council chambers. People are able to watch the live stream, and then we also have 2 overflow rooms in City Hall located in this building. The meetings from both the Committee of the Whole as well as the City Council meeting are recorded, and they could be watched on the city's website starting tomorrow. And if individuals have questions at any time, we encourage them to contact us about any of the information that was presented or any additional questions or feedback that you may have. Very briefly, at the Committee of the Whole meeting, we did review the protest that took place in front of Congressman Schneider's house on June 29th at approximately 3 a.m., as well as we discussed the chalking event that took place in the downtown district on both July 5th as well as July 10th. Chief Jogman walked through the city and specifically the law enforcement response to all of those incidents. We reviewed the applicable local laws as well as the state laws that pertain to those incidents. And specifically as it pertains to the protest, it was identified that those were unlawful actions, but the chief identified the actions that the police department took, the reasons that they took those actions to ensure that the protest left that area as expeditiously as possible. We also reviewed a number of different local code, either new local laws as well as code amendments that the corporate authorities, the mayor and city council could advance. And so I'd like to just go through those if that's okay.
Thank you.
So the first, we talked about establishing a local prohibition to protest in front of a residence. Now, state law already has a prohibition for residential picketing, but the advantage of having a local law is if the state does not prosecute a case, there's a local law then that would be in place that certainly we could advance if applicable, or it may be worthwhile just to have both the local violation as well as the state violation in place. And so there was support for that. There was also support to advance the definition of residential picketing beyond what the state law allows, because that is very narrowly tailored to basically a specific residence. And so we talked about expanding that, taking into consideration potential protests that may happen, for example, outside of a school, but it certainly impacts a large residential area that's adjacent. So we'll work with Corporation Counsel and make sure that we've got clear definitions and certainly lawful definitions. The second, we discussed prohibiting all protests from dusk to dawn or a specific time restriction. And again, state already addresses residential picketing, but this was specific to dusk to dawn or a time restriction. And so there was support to advance that. We will also take into consideration candlelight vigils. As we heard from the council members, there was support for those and certainly in the evening hours, so we will review those as part of our research. We talked about increasing the fine for blocking a street or sidewalk. So currently the violations for that range anywhere from about $25 to $50 up to $500. So we'll look at an increased fine accordingly. We discussed a prohibition of masks for any rallies or protests, also taking into consideration that there possibly could be exemptions for religious reasons or medical reasons. And there was majority support from the city council to take a look at that local regulation. We discussed a notification for anyone interested in a protest rally or chalking. There was not support to have a formal permit, but we will explore the feasibility for notifying the city. And again, we currently encourage this, and that's an opportunity for us to understand what people want to do, to provide information about the regulations pertaining to the activities. So for example, you can't impede pedestrian traffic, you can't impede vehicular traffic. So provide information to people as it pertains to the local and state laws. And so we will explore a notification requirement in that regard. There was not support to treat chalking as graffiti. Chalking is specifically, basically water-based, it's non-permanent, as opposed to graffiti if someone takes a spray paint or other paint materials that's more permanent in nature. So there was not support for treating chalking as graffiti, understanding there's a significant amount of chalking that takes place in residential neighborhoods and part of community spirit and activities. So it was not support for that, but we had to have a discussion about that. And there was also, we talked about prohibiting chalking in all business districts on public rights of way. So there was robust discussion about that, and ultimately no support to prohibit chalking. And the reason for that is just in light of the significant amount of community spirit and positive events that take place around chalking. We know that the Art Center in Highland Park does a great job in coordinating with residents and businesses to do chalking in the business districts. The Highland Park High School does it specifically around homecoming. And so as it pertains to the law, Corporation Counsel really reiterated that we cannot regulate speech based on content. Can't say we agree with this, but we don't agree with this, so we're going to choose to enforce. The government can reasonably restrict time, place, and manner of speech as long as 3 specific standards must be met. And so we discussed the laws pertaining to that. And then further, in terms of our next steps, we talked about the mural ordinance, and so we will review the provisions that were approved previously as part of our mural regulations and how they may apply to these topics. And then we will also research if any other communities have adopted a mask ban, and if so, the hours for any protests or rallies, so the dusk to dawn conversation. So that's in terms of the next steps. So overall, we as a staff will be working with Corporation Counsel to follow up on all of these issues. We will bring them back to a committee of the whole meeting for further policy feedback and input. We know there's a number of people interested in this topic, so please sign up for the city's e-news. So that's how we are going to be communicating with the public, a recap of these meetings that we've held, as well as when this topic will be coming back. And again, if you have any questions, feedback, or recommendations at any time, please feel free to contact us. I'm the city manager. You can also email the general city email at cityhp@cityhpil.com. or go to our website, and all the information is posted on there.
Great. Thank you for that summary, and thank you again to my council colleagues and our Corporation Counsel for that good conversation. I know there's more to come, and we appreciate all the thoughtfulness that went into it. Thank you. Saturday night, along with the rest of the nation, we watched in shock as an assassination attempt was made on former President Donald Trump. It should go without saying, political violence is never acceptable and must be condemned in the strongest of terms. We may disagree on policy, but in the end, we are all Americans who want the best for our children and our nation. Violence is never the answer. Continuing on to appointments, I have one appointment this evening. I'd like to appoint Josh Nannis, who is currently the chair of the Business and Economic Development Advisory Group, to Commissioner on the Plan and Design Commission. I'm seeking concurrence from this council on that appointment. Yes? Yes? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Josh, for your continued service on behalf of the community. I have no proclamations this evening and no other business this evening. I believe there's no business from the council, so at this time, I'll invite City Manager Newkirk to provide the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of reports on behalf of staff. First, there's 9 items on the omnibus agenda for your consideration. We recommend approval. Item number 2 was posted on Thursday as a resolution and then reposted on Friday as an ordinance approving a professional service agreement with Microsystems. This is for our file storage, retrieval, scanning, and imaging services. So we are recommending approval, but just want to make sure to bring to your attention it's an ordinance versus a resolution. Next, included in the packet is our second quarter update of our major projects. So on an annual basis, we compile a list of major projects which are generally defined as major initiatives outside of our day-to-day operation. And so they are organized by department. It includes a project lead, an overview of the initiative, and when each initiative is planned to take place. And then highlights in each quarter are made in red font, so they're easily identifiable of what's the update for the specific issue. So we have 122 major projects, which is a very aggressive work plan. We have about 90% of projects are either ongoing, in progress, or completed. And so we're working through this aggressive plan. And we have 2 more major projects than you saw the last quarter, and so those are updated in red as well. One pertains to the relocation of Miss Nitro, looking at considerations for that, as well as we added the new Port Clinton concert series, so hopefully people saw those and will attend those concerts. And then also at the request of a council member, we added a new column which identifies those initiatives that are planned to be presented at either a committee of the whole or city council meeting. So you can see what are those initiatives that we are just working on as staff and moving forward, and then those policy related matters that come to you for policy considerations. So happy to answer any questions you may have about any of that.
Questions? Nope? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you,
And then
Nita.
Just moving on.
If you could introduce, go ahead.
Sorry, just quickly, do want to thank everyone that joined us for the Independence Day events. As previously communicated, we worked diligently using a trauma-informed approach, really working to balance the diverse needs of the community. We had 3 events that we coordinated throughout the day. So the remembrance took place at 10 a.m., and then we had our traditional parade, and then the Park District coordinated their 4th Fest. So this is just highlights of a few photos from that event. Very important is once we're done with July 4th, we start planning for the next year. And so if people have any feedback about any part of 2024, any recommendations that you have for 25, please email us at the address noted. And then certainly we'll come before the City Council as we undertake further planning in the future. And then just a quick update on Central Business District improvements. So if people scan that QR code on the screen, it'll take you to a landing page where you can get more detailed updates about the various different capital improvements and the infrastructure investment taking place throughout the community. We have $34 million of infrastructure investment planned in Highland Park this year. $6 million of that is in the Central Business District. We know people are feeling it, but please, please continue to support the local business. It's so incredibly important. We can go to the next slide, Amanda. So the 2nd Street parking lot was the first infrastructure project that we worked on at the start of the season, and that parking lot opened up week of May 17th. It is going to be closed. It's closed starting today just for a few short days so we can pour and cure the entrance and exit lanes. We talked about keeping it open, but because there's not safe vehicular movements within that parking lot, it's really important just to close it, get that work all done, and then reopen as fast as possible. So further updates are available on the website. And then if people are looking for alternate parking locations, if you go to the city's website, /parking, you can find all the parking locations in the Central Business District. And then the Central Business District resurfacing project is underway. So you can see the streets that are currently underway or planned to be resurfaced. We are doing this in segments, really just to minimize the impact on each geographic area. And so basically we do milling for about 2 days, and then they're going to pour and cure the area, and then they're going to move to different segments. And this work is all being done in the evening to really try to minimize the impact for customers and businesses. And also, that's really kind of the safest time because there's really less traffic and less pedestrian movements throughout the district. So we have on our website the different work that's planned as part of the phases. So we are currently in phase 2, which you can see the work that's being done in that area. And then if we go to the next slide. And then the Second Street Improvement Project, so I won't read this, but a number of different improvements are planned along Second Street from Central to Elm. And so that work is underway. Big part was the sewer installation. And as people traverse that area now, you can really start to see the improvement coming together because the curbs are poured. You can see where the bump huts are going to be for enhanced outdoor dining. There's going to be enhanced ADA access, new asphalt, new LED lighting, new seating. And so it's going to look spectacular once it's done. So we really thank everybody for their patience throughout this construction project. And again, we're working diligently in regular communication with the businesses just to try to meet all of their needs and really pushing and promoting for people to shop local to support them, particularly during this challenging time. And then that QR code, once again, for people who have questions about any of the projects that are underway, it'll take you to that page.
So I have a quick question. Do you have an estimated date of completion-ish?
For
the
which,
whole thing.
for
Whole
everything?
thing,
Okay,
yeah.
for everything. Well, we'll start to see really substantial completion by the end of this month. But really, the entire work is going to be done by the end of the construction season. So, I mean, we are going to go until October, but everything will really start to improve and look better through July, after July.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And I certainly want to thank the police and our staff for the 4th of July. That took an unbelievable amount of planning. People started, I believe, at 3 in the morning, and we just deeply appreciate all of the care and concern that they brought to that important day.
Thank you. Thank you.
So,
We have
thank
an
you.
exceptional team.
Absolutely. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to pass it to you again. The next item on the agenda is business from the public.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this is an opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council on a topic that was within the council's purview and jurisdiction, but is not listed in another location on the agenda. If you would like to speak about a matter that is listed on the agenda, we ask that you wait until that agenda item is called, and we will give you an opportunity to speak then. If your matter is on the omnibus or consent agenda, please let us know if you'd like us to remove that matter from the consolidated list so that you can speak about it. Please be apprised that business from the public is not intended to be a forum for open dialogue or engagement with members of the City Council. Rather, it is intended as an opportunity to make comments to the City Council. Please do not expect a response from anyone tonight. If appropriate, the council may direct your questions and comments to myself as a city manager or other city staff to respond, or issues raised at a later date. All comments should be directed to the mayor and city council. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. We request that speakers refrain from throwing objects or using poppers or noisemakers, and that the public not applaud or make other comments after any speaker. We ask that everyone be respectful, civil, and non-repetitive, please.
Thank you. My name is Carl Lamprecht, and tomorrow will be the 79th anniversary of the nuclear bomb going off in Los Alamos in 1945. This book is about Sodom. The link between these two events, 4,000 years ago and 79 years ago, is quite interesting. And I'm returning this book to the Highland Park Library as I leave this meeting. One of the main things that is occurring to me is high taxes. Now, the governor, some months ago, donated to China over $200 million. Nothing was done. That's just money in China's pocket. That's to build a plant somewhere in Illinois. It should be some Americans doing this, not the Chinese. That's only the beginning of the subsidy. federal government is giving $6 million. Our government is giving $2 billion. If I said 6 million, it's 6 billion. I think this has to stop, and we have to start looking how we can reduce taxes everywhere. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Next speaker?
Good evening, Your Honor. Good evening to the council. My name is Les Blau. I'm a member of the Bar of the state of Illinois and a grateful resident of Highland Park. I've been here since 3:30 this afternoon. I've been very active in Central Avenue Synagogue for decades. We live in an extraordinary time. I don't think there's anybody in this room that doubts it. And I just need to say in my heart that I understand that the word you had to use to describe the people who descended on the street where United States Congressman Brad Schneider lived was protesters. But in my heart, I think of them as a mob vigilante. What we are doing tonight is paying respect to you for your recognition of the challenge that that demonstration placed at this time in our history. We know here in Highland Park that Bobby Crimo's first goal was not to attack the parade. He came to Central Avenue Synagogue with an empty knapsack to see if he'd be searched. And only because he was searched did he decide that that target, a Jewish target, was too dangerous. We are so grateful to you for your concern and for the concern of the police of Highland Park. And there's no doubt in my mind, and I hope in anybody else's mind, that when 7 policemen or 8 policemen, I don't remember the exact number, had to deal with 40 demonstrators who might have been armed, and had to deal with residents who might have been armed, and had to deal with the situation that they confronted, we understand that at that moment, arresting people on the spot would have been infeasible, not possible. And I don't think anybody in this room believes, nor do I believe, that the police have ignored what the chief of police has characterized as continuous unlawful activity that day. And what I want to say before I go off to services tonight, which I'm doing in a few minutes, is that I'm very grateful to you, Your Honor, to the council, to the police, and I know that the incident that happened and the threat that it poses to our way of life and our democracy will not be ignored. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker?
Good evening. My name is Chris Goodsnyder. I'm a resident of Deerfield. I thank the City Council and the Mayor for allowing me to speak this evening. I was a resident, a neighbor of Brad Schneider's before he moved to Highland Park, and we grew close walking our dogs and chatting about current events together. And when I heard, personally, I back Congressman Snyder's position with regard to his unconditional demand for the immediate release of American, Israeli, and international hostages. I was so frustrated and disappointed to hear the recent events, hate-filled and terrorizing protests that occurred in front of Brad Schneider's personal residence. I was very disappointed, even more disappointed to hear what I perceive to be Highland Park's kinder and gentler response that will not deter and will only encourage future hate-filled anti-Semitic riots in the future. In light of the recent decision in the federal court of the Southern District of Wisconsin, the case is Coalition to March on the RNC versus the City of Milwaukee, case number 24CV0704. It's only about a week old. That court held that municipalities can enforce reasonable time, place, and manner, content-neutral restrictions on speech, and I'm requesting that Highland Park strictly enforce the existing code to protect your residents from facing future anti-Semitic attacks in the future. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Skip Schreier, 64-year resident of Highland Park. I've been very active in the Jewish community my entire life. I, like many of the people here, have know our history, learned what happened, and determined to make sure it doesn't happen again. These are very difficult times. I'm very appreciative of what the police did do the night in front of Brad's house and what the council is talking about doing to prevent it. But I think that we're a little bit missing the point. These people were not there to protest. They were there to scare and to taunt and do exactly what happened, make us afraid. And I do believe that if there was a person standing with a Ku Klux Klan outfit in front of a black person's house with a noose, they would be arrested. And I think we have to treat the people that did that in the same way. And I do think that there's things that we could do that would deter them. And if you look at the colleges and universities that were successful in nipping in the bud these things, they're the ones that were the toughest and most aggressive. And I don't think we should be afraid to do that. We can take pictures of the people that were there. We can publish their names. We can publish their faces, say that they're not welcome in Highland Park. That's what I think that we should do, and I hope that you'll all consider doing that. These people are not innocent protesters. These are professionals. They're being schooled on how to do it, and we have to make sure that they know that, because they're planning on coming back. We have to make sure that we're ready for them and say they're not welcome in our community. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here this evening. First of all, Mayor Rodering, I want to thank you for the response that you gave me to the email that I sent you. I truly do appreciate it. I felt that we were on the same page, and this bothered you as much as it bothers everybody in this room.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to state your name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff Michael, M-I-C-H-A-L.
Thank you.
So 18-year resident of Highland Park. And I appreciate everything the police chief said earlier this evening. I heard that, and I don't want to try to convince anybody that I know the first thing about law enforcement and the tough job that this gentleman has. I wouldn't want it for a day. And I understand all about their efforts in de-escalating the situation and making sure that the situation was neutralized and nobody got hurt. The question that is still unanswered, as far as I'm concerned, maybe others in this room, is, again, to build on what Skip just said, why wasn't anything done afterwards? Maybe nothing could have been done at the scene that evening, but there were people there. I don't know if driver's licenses were captured, license plates were captured. Well, like Skip said, these people will be back again. So I submitted for a FOIA request. I read the police report cover to cover. There were 3 individuals that were named in that report. So I sent my wife on a mission to do a little research online of these people in the report. And one of the persons, this lady, she managed to find a picture of her, is I think a lab technician somewhere at a university. And we looked at her and said, it looks really familiar. 6 months earlier, my wife went to a screening of a documentary on the Nova Festival down in Logan Square. A group stormed the theater. She called me frantic, saying that she couldn't get out of the theater. And she managed to take video of it at some point when she was leaving. Sure as, anything, the leader of that group was the same person, I believe, about 90% certain, that came to our own neighborhood. So like Skip said, they will be back, and we got to be prepared to handle those situations, because they won't come back with 40 people, they'll come back with 400 people. And that's the question, is what are we going to do next time? We have plenty of laws on the books, but we have an issue with apparently enforcing those laws and bringing these people to be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is William Chislowski. I am not a Highland Park resident. I do have friends and colleagues and even some family members who are. And before I forget, I want to genuinely thank you for your service. It's often a thankless job. It's not state secrets to know that Highland Park has traditionally been a community that people aspire to live in. And to its credit, it's been a sleepy community for generations and generations, where the bake sale and Port Clinton were probably some of the biggest planning events, and you probably miss those days. I wasn't going to come because I'm not a resident, and I'm going to be purposefully provocative now, which is, seeing what happened at Representative Schneider's house, I realize how welcoming you are of non-residents. So, I'm going to put on a ski mask purposefully, because if you feel uncomfortable, you should. You should feel uncomfortable. And this is at a public meeting. Not public speech, not a demonstration, not the stuff we teach our kids about free speech. So what you said, before I forget anything else, what the city manager said about your meeting of the whole, I was almost going to walk out because it sounds great. Do it. Talk is cheap. Get it done. You talked about new laws. Simply enforce the existing laws. Though I went to Harvard Law School, I don't have to be a legal scholar to know nuisance laws and to know if you show up at 3 in the morning. If I show up in front of any of your houses with this tonight and spill blood with a megaphone and start screaming, you good with that? Is that okay, council members? The example of the KKK symmetry, it would never be allowed. Never, ever, ever. And it shouldn't. You shouldn't tolerate a pro-Israel group doing that at 3 in the morning. Be viewpoint neutral. The Jewish community doesn't need any favors. They need you to enforce the existing laws. My thought at the time when I read it in the newspaper is this is ignorance or cowardice. You're all smart. So it's not ignorance. I was going to proclaim it's cowardice, but again, what I heard before the meeting, we should all adjust to new information. Do it. Otherwise, it's pure cowardice. You shouldn't seek woke points. Enforce the existing laws. You have a tough job. Don't neuter the police who are unbelievable. Empower the police. Walk tall. Get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. I'm going to ask that we not applaud because we have several people who want to talk tonight. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Renee Kahn. I don't mean to outdo Skip, but I've lived here for 70 years. My family's 4 generations here. I'm also a founding member of Shamash, which are these wonderful ladies that support the Jewish community. I just need to say that we could not have gotten more support in any community than we have gotten in Highland Park. Our mayor has stood by us. We've been able to hold events when it was Shloshim, when it was Hanukkah. So our community has stood by us, and this continues to be a safe community for Jewish people, and we're very grateful for that. I think the question around what happened at Brad's house is, if we know the people that were there, can that information be made public so that we can keep an eye on them and know that we're safe? I think that's what I feel threatened by a bit. Also, I've come face to face in Port Clinton with a gentleman who screamed at us that there were no rapes, there were no murders. That's been threatening, but I do have to say that the Highland Park Police stayed by us and made sure that nothing happened. So I guess what I'm here to say is that we need to know who's coming after us, and we are beyond grateful for the support of the mayor and the city of Highland Park, and of course, our wonderful police. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Simona Bogut. I grew up in Highland Park. I currently live in Chicago, but I'm actually up here for the summer, so we've been up here for about 2 months. And I want to let you know that Highland Park, to us Jews living in the city, has been a refuge. This is where we can still come to when things like, I do not let my 10-year-old son visibly identify as Jewish in my neighborhood in Chicago anymore. But in Highland Park, it's always been safe until the recent activities of the past few weeks. Obviously, everything that happened outside Brad Schneider's house was extremely scary and disappointing. And what happened, I myself came into contact with the person who was chalking in Port Clinton Square. In a WhatsApp group, we got notified that there was anti-Semitic writing being written. My father and I took a bucket of water to go wash away the anti-Semitic writing. And we thought we were showing up to just writing, not the person still writing, to see a person with a kafiyah on his head writing about the genocide in Port Clinton Square, pretty much on the anniversary of the shooting that occurred here that my friends and family were at, was just so unbelievably upsetting. And to see the city write that, comparing that to children chalking, was very disappointing. I can tell you it was not innocent chalking. The minute I came up and asked him what he was writing and what he was doing, he started screaming at me. He called me a racist. He said, everybody in Highland Park is a racist. This is what we do. He became really verbally confrontational. So I know we've talked about, yes, the chalking is not technically illegal, but this person was having verbal, threatening interactions with people walking by the square. There were multiple women he started screaming at as I was standing there. One body shaming her and talking about her appearance as he filmed her. For who he's filming, I don't know, and where these videos are going. I called the police and he told me, go ahead, they're not going to do anything to me. They've already been here. So the message that is being sent repeatedly is this is okay in Highland Park. It was, nobody was arrested with Brad Schneider. They said they'll be back. This chalker was doing this and, nothing, no consequences happened. And he's been all over social media bragging about how there were no consequences. Mind you, this is a person with an arrest record. It took us 5 minutes of Googling to find that out, that this is, and I'm talking about a violent arrest record. This person has assaulted police officers. And it's the same thing, it took us 5 minutes to identify people who showed up at Brad Schneider's house as lawyers. So I really urge the city to identify these people and send a clear message that this is not allowed up here. This is supposed to be a safe place for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Anybody else? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Jacobs. I just want to thank everyone who's spoken tonight, and especially our city and our law enforcement for everything that they've done. As our police chief said first thing in our other meeting, they de-escalated the situation. It did not become violent, and I think in the moment that is obviously the most important thing. He also said that they're looking at other ways so that if this happens again, they will be more prepared for a faster, more robust police presence. And we talked about other policy changes that are being considered, and I think our city is doing absolutely the right thing in looking to solutions. I urge everyone to please be careful when thinking about all of these things. We have to see the big picture and make sure that we're not limiting rights that are important to all of us, but I have faith in all of you that you will do this as you consider these policy changes. I really do appreciate everything everyone said. I think a lot of it is true. This is a safe haven where I've always felt safe. I grew up in Highland Park as a Jew. I wear a Star of David, and I've never felt until very recently that that's a problem and that I need to hide that. So these are legitimate concerns. These people did come to our community. We've had a tumultuous few years in this community, and I think that's right. We do need to send a message. We do need to be prepared for if and when people like this come back, but we also need to be very, very careful with how we do that. And I think that I really do have faith in all of you, and I appreciate that you are letting the community speak and letting us share our thoughts. And just in case anyone forgot, we can email anytime. We can email the city with our thoughts, and it sounds like they are taking that into consideration. And we just thank you very much for everything, and we know that you have our backs and that we will always be welcome here, and none of that is going to change, but it's a tough time, so really appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Michael Levy. I'm a resident of Highland Park for 36 years, and I would like to reinforce, if I may, what some of the other speakers have said. I sense that the sense of urgency as to what we went through the last couple of weeks is maybe not as strong as it could be. And I feel that the message is soft. And I'm hoping to see that within the next short while, that what a lot of the speakers have said tonight are taken to heart. changing slightly, for example, when I speak to the messaging, there's a sign outside, the spot where we have the memorial, and there's a flag of Israel, and there's a flag of the United States. I have no idea who put those flags up, but however, I think that they're pretty appropriate for the city of Highland Park. And then there's a sign next to those two flags, which says as follows. It's a sign of the city. It says, the city of Highland Park disclaims any interest in or support or endorsement of the erection, maintenance, or content of the display, and no public funds of the city finances were used, directly or indirectly, to purchase, erect, or maintain the display. So that to me is kind of an indication that we're a bit soft, that the message isn't there. This is a town, there's a lot of Jewish people here. We're all proud Americans. We're proud Jews. And I think that to have a caveat next to a display like that sends the wrong message. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi. Hi, I'm Sivan Schondorf. I'm a resident of Highland Park. My parents moved here in 1999, and I've lived here on and off since then and for a while now. So I want to give a little context about why the protest that happened in front of Brad Schneider's house was so terrifying for Jews. The keffiyeh is a garment that has been appropriated by many groups since 10/7 to demonstrate solidarity with Palestinians, which sadly often means it's a fight to destroy the only Jewish state on earth. If you find me one person who says from the river to the sea as an agitator who sees a vision of peace, let me know. What few people know is that for centuries in Muslim and Arab countries, Jews and Christians who resided there were called dhimmis. They were excluded from public office, they were limited in their ability to build places of worship, and they were expected to dress in distinctive clothing. Essentially, they were second-class citizens and forbidden from wearing keffiyehs. In modern day, the keffiyeh worn particularly over the head and the face represents violence and intimidation toward Jewish people. If you really break it down, the keffiyeh is anti-Semitic. Even my lawyer, our business lawyer at work, said it was, and we could tell our secretary so. A middle-of-the-night protest with drums, smoke, and keffiyeh head coverings chanting anti-Semitic slurs in front of the congressman's house was not free speech, it was hate speech. I know there was some discussion on the details of that. Minimally, it breaks the city ordinances, but most importantly, it is intimidation of the Jewish family and all of the Jewish neighbors, and I'm sure the non-Jewish neighbors were not so happy either. I moved to Highland Park, having grown up in the city, because Highland Park to me represents a safe, quiet place that is accepting of my Jewish family. My great-grandmother escaped the pogroms to come to Chicago because her house was continuously raided and members of her family beaten for being Jews. My other grandparents came here as refugees after surviving the death camps, orphaned, without any siblings, and Chicagoland embraced them and honored them. If we allow terrorizing on the streets, what starts as hate speech and anti-Semitic slurs and propaganda online turns into action, and we know where action leads. We must be united as a city and unequivocally condemn the anti-Semitism and the Jew hatred and intimidation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening, Council. Officer Jogman. First, Sarah Ravitch. I'm 41 and a 39-year resident of Highland Park, so I can't beat some people. I first want to say I'm so grateful to the council. I'm so grateful to our police, and I love our community. I love being from Highland Park. I love what we have here. I love what we stand for. I love raising my children here. I have two young kids, 6 and 4. I'm so proud to be from Highland Park. I always have been, and I always will be. I'm heartsick based on what's been going on in our community. You know, on the 4th of July, we were at the parade, as many of us were. And the past few weeks, I know we're upset. I know we're heartsick. I think I'm, encouraged to hear the many steps that the council discussed this evening. I look forward to seeing the follow-up and the action, and thank you very much for opening up the meeting to everyone. Thank you for that. And I would encourage the council to adopt a definition of anti-Semitism. I think that in order to combat what we're all talking about, we need to define it, and then we can move on from that. I would also encourage us to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. As a very proud granddaughter of a survivor who survived 5 camps, including Auschwitz, I think that it is incredibly important to name what we need to talk about, to define it, and then we can then combat it. So again, thank you so much, council members. Thank you especially to our police force, who my children love more than I can tell you. And again, thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Adam Nemero, resident of Highland Park. Good evening, Mayor Rotary, members of the City Council, City Departments, more so to the residents of Highland Park. Following is not intended to minimize anyone else's
What's your name? I need your name for the
Oh,
record.
I thought I said that. Adam Nemero, resident, Highland Park.
Okay, sorry. That was
That's okay.
super fast.
Can I
Thank
start
you.
over?
Thank you.
All right. So the following is not meant to minimize anyone else's suffering, but merely to share mine. On Shabbat, the Jewish Sabbath, October 27, 2018, a man who became radicalized online to believe the Great Replacement theory, same message espoused by neo-Nazis in Charlottesville, who marched with torches shouting, "Jews will not replace us," entered a synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and gunned down 11 congregants, critically injuring 2 others. It stands and hopefully will forever as the largest single loss of life of Jews in America today. This tragic event led to many synagogues installing robust security systems, metal detectors, even armed guards to help their congregants feel somewhat safe. It's disheartening that those measures continue to be necessary today. Allotted time does not allow me to list the number of other horrific acts committed against Jews over the last 50 years in the United States, supposed safe haven for Jews, such as the murders in 2014 outside of Kansas City, countless bomb threats, vandalism against synagogues or schools, vile desecrations of Jewish cemeteries, physical attacks, and more. All of them share one common goal: to instill fear and discomfort against minority Jewish population. Almost all receive the same public response. Members of many community and faith-based organizations, both here locally and around the United States, emphatically voiced their opposition that such ideas and acts still be present and persistent in modern-day American society, offer their support to the greater Jewish population. What about on October 7th, again the Shabbat, when over 1,200 people, mostly Jews, some non-Jews, including American citizens, were murdered in a terrorist attack that subjected many to brutal acts of violence that made the Pittsburgh shooter apparel most humane. And over 250 people, mostly civilians, including Americans, were taken as hostage. Aside from the swift and emphatic message of support from many world leaders, for the greater American public outside of Jewish organizations, there was mostly silence, including from those I consider to be personal friends. Even more disturbing was to watch Chicago and other cities around the United States, those who took to the streets the very next day in celebration of the single largest loss of Jewish lives since the Holocaust, hopefully will be forevermore. To those that did reach out and continue to do so, please know how much it means to me, to us. Maybe those who stayed quiet did so because it didn't take place on American soil, felt they weren't up to date on developments of the region, and that it was too complicated or controversial a subject to broach. Either way, the silence was and is deafening. Many people in our city have a personal connection with Israel, if nothing else, a pit in our stomachs for such barbaric slaughter of other Jews. That's why the events of October 7th resonate so deeply amongst the Jewish population in Highland Park and around the country. So you can only imagine what it feels like to wake up in the middle of the night, June 29th, again, the Sabbath, to hear groups of individuals marching through the streets of our city, shouting amongst other inflammatory slogans, "No sleep for Jews." I'll say it again, no sleep for Jews. It was no accident they chose to come here, a city with a sizable Jewish population, home to a Jewish congressperson. While these and other incidents around the U.S. mostly target Jews, other Highland Park residents and Americans should not feel immune. Many of the organizations leading the charge in today's Jew hate are fueled by anti-Semitic nations. The same ones who happily burn and stomp on the American flag, shout death to America, illegitimately imprison Americans. How many American flags did you count at the many university protests, encampments, and anti-Jew marches this spring? 0.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
Next speaker. Wow. Are there any other speakers who wish to be heard? Okay. Oh, yep.
Hi, my name's Ashby Beasley. I can see this lady is filming me. She filmed me about a week ago. A friend of mine lives near Congressman Schneider. And after what happened, several of my non-Jewish friends and my Jewish friends all were in a text chat asking, what can we do? How can we help? How can we help this situation? How can we help you? And my Jewish friends said very clearly, show up, stand next to us, say that this has no place here. Don't sit idly by, don't stay quiet. That's how you can help. So when I heard that there was tracking downtown, I didn't even hesitate to get in my car to come downtown, because we don't need conflict in our communities. We don't need people fighting or screaming in front of our kids. And so I went down there. And, you know, in my heart of hearts, I thought, I just want to stop this situation. And so I did engage with the trucker. I asked him to leave. And when he didn't have a car because people were screaming, I offered to give him a ride because he needed to move. And I know you think that's funny, but I wanted him to leave, and I wanted things to be quiet and back to peace. And that has led to a video that the woman filming me contributed to that resulted in an organization publishing online that led to my address being published online and threats to my family. And on Saturday, a woman rode her bike up to my family and in front of my 8-year-old son called me an anti-Semite and a bitch, which has resulted in my 8-year-old son having a physical reaction and not being able to sleep. And it's been a really tense couple of days. But the other day, I looked at my husband and I said, you know what? This is how our Jewish friends and neighbors have been living since October 7th. They are living in fear. They are afraid. And so showing up is the right thing. And I think it's going to take all of us. I don't think that any of you who are Jewish should have to stand alone. So I want to ask you guys to consider working with peacekeepers, working with community violence interrupters, people who will come in and stand between groups that are, you know, people who are agitators and between other people to help and keep the peace in our community. If the police can't, you know, ask someone to leave, community members can, people who live in this community can, and that's what these organizations do, and they do it peacefully because they keep the peace. I think we all live here and we're all neighbors. And I think we all have, most of us have goodness in our hearts. And I hate seeing our community torn up like this. And I hate seeing my friends and neighbors live in fear and to struggle like this. So I hope that, like, moving forward, we can all find a way to stand up for each other and stand by each other.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers who wish to be heard?
I'm Allison Nemero, 46-year Highland Park voter. I'm going to try to summarize what my husband was starting to say, but to start with the fact that we have an honorary daughter, a Northwestern student, who came to Highland Park because of the protests on her campus, because Highland Park was her safe place. And she was devastated to hear about what's been going on here, both with our congressman and with our city and the chalking and the hate speech. And it goes beyond hate speech. It's a call for our death to some degree. What Adam wanted to share with you is, if you are not Jewish or are Jewish but don't understand the current concern of all of us, please think about this. Earlier this summer, we visited Anne Frank's house in Amsterdam, where she and her family were hidden by her father's associates until, unfortunately, they were discovered by the Nazis and killed. Adam has stood at the various death camps and gas chambers, and if this situation continues to deteriorate for Jews here in Highland Park and elsewhere in America, regardless of any future policies and laws that we change or may be instituted in efforts to protect our citizens against its targeted activities, we have to constantly ask ourselves, and we sort of joke, but we're not joking. Would you hide our family if you're not Jewish? That's what life is like for a Highland Park family right now, is wondering who's going to hide us and help take care of my kids. Standing up and speaking out now as a unified community voice against such blatant hate is crucial to avoid having to have that question posed to you. And I'll finish by thanking the City Council and our mayor and our police for all that they do for us. You're our pride and joy, and we're so proud to be part of Highland Park.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to be heard?
I'm Kevin Coulter. I'm a approximately 13-year resident of Highland Park. Not very long compared to most of you. Just for the record, I'm a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and nothing I say here has anything to do with the Zoning Board. I want to first thank the police chief and his department for diffusing a situation outside the congressman's office or house. I want to thank the mayor and the city manager for the communication that was put out in social media, explaining the situations that have been going on over the last few weeks here in Highland Park. We need to put this in a context, and that is that our ability as a nation to communicate in a polite manner has eroded significantly. Those of us who follow events will remember a member of the Trump administration's dinner being interrupted in Leesburg, Virginia, because they were upset she was in a restaurant. Some of you will remember that after January 6th, people showed up at the junior senator from Missouri's house in Fairfax, Virginia, to protest on the sidewalk, and his wife called the Fairfax police. And they were charged with misdemeanors, if I remember correctly. Locally, our senator's house has been protested outside of. Congresswoman Shiakowski's house has been protested outside of. We have gotten to a point in this nation where groups of people believe this is acceptable. But it really isn't. We need to be able to come together and discuss important issues. And the issues that you have put on the table for this community are among those important issues. Because as a non-Jew, I've had Jewish residents of Highland Park say some pretty insulting things to me and my children. So it does go both ways. You know, we had one father pull my son aside and give him, quote unquote, a Jewish name. My daughter was called out for being that little Mexican girl. Guess what? She's Irish and German. She's not Mexican. She just had a good tan in August. I've had an adult tell me, quote, "You'll never be accepted because you're not a member of the tribe." So it does go both ways, folks, and we all need to be aware of what we say and that it does hurt when it is directed at individuals. So I want to thank the City Council for bringing forth what I think are very important issues, and I hope we take a measured approach and address these collectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, is there anybody else who wishes to? Sure, come on up.
I did not plan this, but I want to thank you all for coming.
Please state your name for the record.
Anita Pope.
Thank you. Uh-oh.
I drop things, I break things.
It's all good.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the speakers here, and I want to thank everybody here for being here. And I've got to tell you something. I feel like I'm being bullied. And for the first time, I feel like a little child in school that has no say, that's listening to the teacher, and I have to listen, and I'm frustrated. Because I don't like what I see, I don't like what I hear, I don't like how I feel. I used to feel happy and great and do things and volunteer, and I get feedback. And I feel like I accomplished something, and I felt good, and I went to bed happy. And now I feel like I'm talking, but I'm talking to the wall. I'm not getting answers. I don't know what you feel, if you're maybe anticipating some answers, your ideas, something on the agenda, but everybody's talking, and I think everybody's wondering, what are we going to do? What are you going to do for us? You're the teachers, we're the students. Our hands are tied. You know, we're all complaining. We're not happy. I'm getting phone calls. I'm getting phone calls from agencies. I'm getting phone calls from my friends and policemen. They're all security. They're leaving the city of Chicago. They can't do their job. They're getting calls. They're not going. Because when somebody's arrested, they get released. And I keep on wondering about I used to love Chicago. And I was down there yesterday, and I saw police, and I thought, I remember growing up, and we had Mayor Daley, and our city worked. That city was like a machine. And we used to shop and go downtown and walk the streets at 12 o'clock at night. People used to come visit. We had lots and lots of tourists. And it was isolated. I went into malls yesterday, it was quiet. And people weren't smiling, people weren't holding packages. My friends don't even go into the city anymore. They're afraid because they're victims, they're being bullied. And what happens in Chicago is a mirror image of what's happening here. We have to open our eyes. You all have to open your eyes. There's Dobermans outside, and we're poodles. You know, Mayor Daley acted fast. And perhaps if he were alive, we wouldn't have had all that vandalism, the police watching while they were taking things out. Somebody was videoing it. I think, why are they videoing it? They should be doing something to stop it. And I think everybody here feels you should be doing something to stop it. We appreciate what you've done. The city worked. Highland Park is not working right now. And we appreciate what you do, but you can't do your job. I have an uncle, and he won't told his children, that's it, first time. You know, the police schools, they're empty. Their qualifications are going down and down and down. They used to have tests, they're rigid. You really had to work at those tests. You were running and climbing in dirt. Now it's like, oh, you want to be a policeman? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Thank you. Next speaker. Are there any other speakers who wish to be heard? Okay, if not, we will continue on with our scheduled business. Items 1 through 9 have been grouped together for omnibus consideration. I just want to pull items 7, 8, and 9 and say how excited I am that Dollop is coming to Braeside and that Danucci's is coming to downtown Highland Park. I hope people are excited about both of those. Yeah, that's worth applaud. And if I could have a motion to approve items 1 through 9.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Councilmember Bloomberg.
Yes, I'm equally excited about 7, 8, and 9. There was a recommendation by the Plan and Design Committee regarding 55 St. John's and the request that's before us, which I'm in favor of, which is whether additional parking may be made available in the Metro lot across the street or set aside in some way. I'm not suggesting adding that to the motion tonight. It's really not before us. I just ask that we investigate it, perhaps send it back to the commission for a complete investigation staff report, to, maybe not now, but to keep an eye on it, see if that becomes necessary.
We will review it with staff, and actually we'll bring any proposed changes straight to the city council.
Perfect.
Great.
That's great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Nope. Is there a motion?
There was.
There
I made
was.
a motion
And there was a
under-
second.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Brockman? Aye. Councilmember Ross?
Aye.
Councilmember Tapia? Aye. Councilmember Littlewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Aye.
Mayor Rotering?
Aye. 6 ayes, no nays. Items 1 through 9 have been approved. We are
Motion
going
to
into,
go into
we need to
closed
go into closed session. Yep. So I'm
Do you
seeking a
want me to make
motion.
that motion here?
Yes, please.
Move to go into closed session to discuss employment matters, collective bargaining, and security pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C1, 2, and 8 respectively.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk call the vote?
Councilmember Brockman? Aye. Councilmember Ross?
Aye.
Councilmember Tapia? Aye. Councilmember Littlewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Aye.
Mayor Rotering?
Aye. 6 ayes, no nays. We will go into close. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who came to join us this evening. Thank you.